Hi, Jessica Nadav bringing you this week's Davar Torah, which I'd like to dedicate for the Refuah Shlema of Eric Yitzchak ben Miriam, Chava Fredel Batetita Malka, Harav Shimon ben Sarah, Harafeh Shmuel Yosef ben Rachel, and in the merit of all our brave Chayalim and Chayalot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should keep them safe and sound and protect them all. Now, this week again, we have a double parasha. We have two parashiot. We're going to be reading the parashiot of Behar and Behukotai. And these are the last two parashiot of the book of Vayikra of Leviticus. Now, I've mentioned before that this book is the middle book of the Torah and seems to be the climax of what came before. This is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. This is why he made a covenant with our forefathers. This is why he took us out of Egypt. This is why he made us a nation who came out of Egypt in a blaze of miracles, and why he gifted us the Torah, so that we could be Mamlechet Kohanim, a kingdom of priests, Begoy Kadosh, and a holy nation. And the book of Vayikra gives us the nitty-gritty of how we go about doing that. Now, it's also no coincidence, as I mentioned before, that we read this book during the period of the Omer, of the counting of the Omer, which, as I've said a few times, is the period during which we work upon ourselves, on our characters, so that we are more worthy and more ready to receive the Torah at Sinai, on Shavuot. We are to be a holy nation when we receive the Torah at Sinai, and we're supposed to be standing ke'ish echad belev echad, like one person with one heart. So how do we do that? So for anyone who's been listening to my Divrei Torah every week, or certainly for the last few weeks, we've been learning about the book of Vayikra, and you will have noticed, not least of all because I've been at pains to underline it again and again, that apart from the mitzvot relating to the Kohanim, to the priests and the Levites, and the sacrifices to be brought, almost every other mitzvah, almost every other commandment in this book relates to mitzvot ben adam lechavero. That's commandments to be fulfilled between man and his fellow human being, rather than between man and God. And that's a bit odd, surely, right? If we're trying to become closer to God and become holy, surely it should be laws between us and God. And yet it's the laws between man and man. So, for example, if we examine the first of this week's parashiot, Behar, we see that it starts by telling us that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai, and then launches into the laws of Shemitah, the resting or the Shabbat of the land. How we deal with its produce, and the return of the land to its owners in the Jubilee. Now, these laws must be fundamental because, as I said before, the parasha is called Behar. Behar means at the mountain. If someone asked me what commandments we needed to remind ourselves were so important that they were given at Sinai, I would say maybe Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, or don't kill, or don't murder, or keep Shabbat. Certainly the laws of land and jubilees would certainly not even cross my mind as part of my shortlist of what was given at Sinai, of the pronouncements or commandments given at Sinai. So what is so important about this parasha and its mitzvot, its commandments, that it has to be stressed that it was given Behar, at the mountain, at Sinai? So Rashi, quoting the Midrash, asks this question, and he answers by saying that all the details and the oral law were all given at Sinai. Okay, very nice, but that doesn't really answer the question, right? And many commentators have tackled this issue, but we're going to examine a different perspective. When we look at the parasha of Behar as a whole, we can see that it describes the possible decline of a person's wealth, of his socio-economic status. So first, a person in trouble sells their land, then they might be forced to sell their house. If they still don't have money, they might have to borrow. So the Torah tells us not to charge them interest. Then they may have to sell themselves as a slave to another Jew, right? And therefore the parasha talks about how to treat that servant, and ultimately they may have to serve themselves as a slave to a non-Jew master. And the parasha ends with a reminder that that person should not forget that he is a Jew and how he must still comply with Torah. Now, this first parasha of Behar, introduces us to two cycles of economic redistribution, Shemitah and Yovel. On every 7th and every 50th year, there will be a Shabbat, a rest for the land. On every 7th and 50th year, one may not sow or reap the produce of the land, And moreover, the parasha tells us that there is no such thing as owning the freehold. This is the lawyer in me coming out, right? The freehold of the land. There is no such thing as freehold land in Israel. Okay, only leasehold. No one can ever own the land of Israel outright. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who then endows it to whoever he wants. Now that's a real leveler, right? As is another one of the laws relating to Yovel, related to this jubilee, the liberation of slaves. 10 times in this week's parasha of Behar, the word brother is used. Just in case we were in any doubt that we're talking about the laws between man and his fellow human being, we're talking about brother. This unbreakable bond of shared responsibility. So the book of Bereshit, as we learned together, the book of Genesis taught us we're one big family. The book of Shemot, of Exodus, taught us that we were once slaves ourselves, and that Hashem chose us to carry the responsibility of representing him in the world, as individuals and as a nation. And this book of Vayikra, of Leviticus, teaches us, as a result of both being one family and having been slaves ourselves, we ought to have a profound understanding and sensitivity, and we must take an immense shared responsibility to our fellow human being. Now, of course, we need food to eat, right? We need to sustain ourselves, we need to make a livelihood. And yet here in this parasha, we're being told that a landowner is being told that for an entire year, he cannot do that. In fact, on the Yovel, on the 50th anniversary, he would have done it for 2 years, for the 49th, which is the 7th cycle of 7, and the Jubilee, and the 50th. So he will have not worked his land for 2 years. Now, very strong faith is required to believe that everything's going to work out anyway, and that you won't starve. Again, here the Torah has prepared us. In the book of Bereshit, we're taught that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, that he spoke the world into existence, the whole of existence, the whole of creation. Let there be, and there was. And Hashem said, let there be, and there was. So we're only here because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, and we're here at his mercy. And in fact, in the story of creation, the name for HaKadosh Baruch Hu used is Elokim, the word of judgment. He can speak this world into existence, and he can speak it out of existence just as easily. We are entirely at his mercy. Okay, so Bereshit prepared us for that. Now, in case that wasn't clear to us, sometimes we're a bit obtuse as human beings, right? So in case that wasn't clear enough to us, the book of Shemot comes along. And it teaches us how Hashem protected us in the desert. He gave us water to drink, he protected us with the clouds, he gave us manna from heaven. He fed us with manna from heaven. And there too, it says that we should only take what we needed. We could only take as much manna as we needed for that day and not save up. Except for on Friday when we had to take 2 portions for Friday and Shabbat, because no man would come on Shabbat. The people were being asked to show some faith. And what happened when the people didn't listen? The man rotted. The man rotted. Now here in this book of Vayikra, we're being reminded again that the land is never entirely ours. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And our food, our sustenance, equally is being provided by Hashem. Maybe not in the obvious, miraculous way that man was from heaven, right? But it's still provided by him. I talked about this in my Devar Torah for Beshalach. I think if you look it up on our YouTube, it's called something like Souvenirs of Journeys or something, and to Bishvat. Please look at that. But we're being taught here that the man from heaven was from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He fed us man from heaven, and we needed faith that it would come. That he said it would come, and therefore it would. But it all depends on us behaving correctly. And we say this twice daily, or 3 times daily in the Shabbat. And it will be if you will act diligently, obey my commandments, which I command you on this day, then I will give you rain for your land at the proper time, and you will gather in your grain, and I will give you grass in your field, and your cattle, and you will eat, and you'll be sated. However, take care. Because if your heart is lured away and you turn astray, okay, then Hashem's wrath will flare against you, and he will close the heavens. So there will be no more rain, and the earth will not yield its produce. So we're being warned twice daily. This is emphasized in the second parasha that we shall be reading, Behukotai. In this second parasha of the week, Hashem promised that if Bnei Israel will keep his commandments, then they will enjoy blessings, they will enjoy material prosperity, and they'll dwell securely in their homeland. But we're also warned about the curses, about the other evils that can also befall Bnei Israel if they disobey and they break their covenants with Hashem. Now in that parasha, in Behukotai, the word keri, in relation to the curses, appears 7 times and does not appear anywhere else in Tanakh. It only appears there. Hashem seems to be saying, if you act towards me with keri, then I will treat you with keri. Now, how do we translate this word keri is a good question. I've seen it translated as stubbornly, obstinately, irregularly, casually. The Rambam translates it as by chance. And he seems to be suggesting that the message is, if you act towards me as if the world is here by chance, then I will leave you to chance. I'll act towards you in the same way. Midah keneged midah. Measure for measure. You act towards me as if the world is here by chance, I will leave you to chance. I'll do exactly the same. And the result of that will be that Israel will be defeated and will be destroyed, or come close to destruction. These parashiyos are teaching us very, very deep lessons. We own nothing. We have a strong responsibility towards others. We should not be living with a mantra of what can I take, because nothing belongs to us anyway, right? So there's no point taking. But what can I give? Because everything that's given to me is given to me only on trust by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore it doesn't belong to me. He gives it to me for me to act correctly and share. We're being taught time and again that the way a Jew fulfills his or her purpose in the world, i.e. becoming close to Hashem and being holy, being kadosh, is by performing and perfecting mitzvot ben adam lechavero, perfecting mitzvot, commandments between man and man. That's our purpose in the world. And finally, the underlying theme that should always be present is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate source of everything. Now, just one final little thought of the week as I was finishing preparing this, it just suddenly occurred to me that isn't it ironic that the word kadosh, which means holy, but also means separate or set apart, we can only become kadosh, separate or set apart, by uniting with people, by being closer to people, by helping other people, by being closer. Isn't that ironic? We can only become apart by becoming closer. We cannot do it literally by setting ourselves apart. We cannot do it by sitting on a mountainside on our own. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to become closer, to be unified, and in that way we become kadosh and fulfill our purpose in the world. Shabbat shalom from the Kol Megadim team.